Mark didn't talk much anymore. His voice, once strong and full of command, had grown quiet in the years since he returned. The world had changed, or maybe he had. Days passed like foggy windows, and nights bled into each other without sleep. The silence of his small, dimly lit home matched the silence inside him. He was alone, not just in space, but in spirit. Most mornings, he sat by the window, not to watch, but to avoid the weight of getting up. His coffee often went cold before he even touched it. There was nothing wrong with his body, not visibly but inside. He was carrying pieces of places no one else could see. War had taken more than he could say. It had taken his friends. It had taken the sound of laughter, and worst of all, it had taken away the version of himself he could live with. He didn't recognize himself in mirrors anymore. His shoulders were still broad, his hair cut short, but the eyes, they were different now. Always alert, always distant, like he was still in that desert town halfway across the world. Mark's neighbors waved sometimes, and he tried to lift his hand, but it felt like it belonged to someone else. People called it PTSD. They handed him pamphlets. A few even tried to get him into groups, but those rooms made him feel more alone than the silence. Words like trauma, recovery, stages, they were too neat, too clinical for the chaos inside him. One Sunday, after another night without sleep, he wandered into the town center. There was a flyer taped to the post office window. Community art studio. No experience needed. It meant nothing to him. He wasn't looking for change. He was just walking, like a ghost, avoiding the echo of his own footsteps. Maybe it was the quiet promise. No experience needed. That phrase repeated in his head. No experience needed. It felt like a door that didn't ask for a key. That night, as the wind brushed against his window and the darkness settled into his bones, Mark pulled the flyer from his jacket pocket. He stared at it for a long time, not sure what he was looking for. He didn't know it yet, but a part of him, the smallest part, was beginning to want something more than silence. The following Thursday, Mark stood outside the community art studio for nearly 10 minutes before stepping in. The building was modest, nestled between a bookstore and a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and warmth. Inside, the studio was lit by soft yellow lights and filled with the quiet murmur of people, not loud, not pressing, just present. He wasn't sure why he walked in. Maybe it was the warmth seeping through the door. Maybe it was the old woman who noticed him standing outside and simply smiled without a word. She had silver hair pulled back in a bun and a kind of calm in her eyes that made him feel like he was NT being judged. Her name was Evelyn. "You don't have to talk," she said, gently handing him a blank canvas and some brushes. "Just try." Mark sat at a corner table, stiff and unsure. The paint felt foreign in his hands, like something meant for children, not a man with blood on his memories. He stared at the canvas for what felt like hours before finally putting a single stroke of blue. It wasn't much, but it broke something. He didn't paint anything recognizable that night. Shapes, lines, colors that didn't match. But when he looked at it later, he realized it looked like how he felt, cattered, dark in places, loud in others. He didn't know if it was good, but for the first time in years, he didn't care. Evelyn didn't ask questions. She didn't try to fix him. All she said was, "There's no wrong way to begin." Her words were like warm tea, simple and soothing, slipping into the cracks. Over the next few weeks, Mark returned. Each visit, he said a little more, not always with words, but with color. He learned to mix black with yellow to make something that looked like hope under rain. He painted the shape of a hand reaching for something. Once, he painted only red, and Evelyn said, "That's brave." Some days, the memories came like storms, loud, sudden, impossible to stop. He would grip the brush too hard or walk out for air. But each time he came back, the canvas didn't judge him, it waited. One evening, Evelyn sat beside him after class. "You're painting through pain," she said softly, "and that means you're not stuck in it." He didn't reply, but her words settled deep. For the first time since returning, he felt something that wasn't guilt. He felt seen. It happened on a quiet afternoon. The light poured through the studio windows, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. Mark stood before a large canvas, hands stained with deep blues and muted greens. He'd been working on something new, bigger, bolder, a mural. It wasn't meant for anyone at first, but as the days passed, it grew into a tribute. Figures began to take shape. Not clear faces, just silhouettes, men standing side by side, looking outward. their boots planted in dust. A flag in the background, not waving triumphantly, but gently tired, like the men beneath it. It was about his brothers, the ones who didn't come home. And maybe, in some quiet way, it was about him too. Other veterans had started coming to the studio. Some came for the company, some out of curiosity. Mark didn't talk much, but he helped them mix colors, showed them how to blend sky and earth. He didn't realize he was becoming something else, something he hadn't been in years. A guide. One evening, Evelyn stepped back as she watched the group. Mark was laughing. It was small, quick, but it was real. The sound seemed to lift the room. "You're not just painting anymore," she told him later. "You're healing, and helping others do the same." He looked down, humbled. He never imagined himself teaching or leading, but it felt natural, like all those years of silence had prepared him for this quiet kind of strength. The mural was finally finished on the first day of fall. The town held a small gathering at the studio to unveil it. Mark stood to the side, hands in his pockets, unsure of how to accept the gratitude people offered. A young boy pointed at the mural and asked, "Are those your friends?" Mark nodded. Yeah, they were. That night, he sat by his window, just like he used to, but something had changed. The silence wasn't so heavy. It felt more like a pause than a weight. The moon hung low, and for once, he didn't feel alone under it. Mark still carried the past. Some things never leave. But through color, through motion, through quiet moments of connection, he found peace, not perfect, not complete, but real. He had painted his pain, and in doing so, he uncovered something he thought he'd lost forever, a second chance at life. Sometimes, healing doesn't come with loud breakthroughs or sudden awakenings. Sometimes, it arrives slowly, like paint drying on a canvas, quiet, patient, and full of meaning. Mark's journey reminds us that peace isn't found in forgetting the past, but in facing it with gentleness. If his story moved you, let it be a reminder. No pain is too deep to be softened by expression. No silence too long to be broken by hope. If this story touched you, consider liking, sharing, or leaving a comment. And don't forget to subscribe for more life-changing stories from the tales we share.